You're watching Obama in Springfield. The President Returns, a News Channel 20 special report.
Welcome back to News Channel 20 as we have team coverage all throughout the afternoon. It's been 4 hours so far, and we are going strong, and we'll continue to do so because President Obama in the middle of an historic visit to Springfield. Right now he's at the Hoagland Center for the Arts addressing supporters, and it's home turf for him as we saw at the General Assembly. It's a lot of people on his side laughing, enjoying the time, and also the people along the route waving and saying hello. We're just blown away that Adam Morgan got to see him.
We are blown away that this young man, 10-year-old, got the opportunity to meet really his idol, and not only him but his grandmother as well. And you know, we had an opportunity to share his story, and we want to share it with you once again. So take a listen to this story.
He said Barack Obama before he said me, Mom.
And that's when Adam Morgan's passion for presidents began.
I would go to Abraham Lincoln's house. Next, I would go see George Washington.
If 10-year-old Adam Morgan had one wish, it would be to travel back in time.
I would go and talk to John F. Kennedy. I would ask him a question.
Talking with past presidents of the United States isn't just something Adam writes about.
I like presidents.
It's something his family says he talks about nonstop.
He's intrigued about Lincoln and freeing the slaves, and he gets intrigued about George Washington was the first president.
Adam struggles in school because of a learning disability, but his mom says when it comes to presidents, he shines.
Information that he takes in school, he has a hard time with remembering, and he doesn't really have that well of a short-term memory, but he can talk about this like he was just there yesterday.
Adam pores over books and flashcards.
Anything he can get his hands on, he likes to look at. We've been to the Lincoln House probably 3 or 4 times, and he just is, every time he goes in, it's like his first time there.
And now Adam's hoping his next story will be about meeting our Commander-in-Chief.
I would really hope that he would get to shake his hand or something, because I think that would, for him, would be a dream come true.
Lindsay Hess, ABC News, Channel 20.
Now that ran last night.
That sure did.
And we thought, perhaps cynically, and we do apologize now after the fact, but we didn't think anybody's going to get close to the president.
We thought it was a long shot.
There you go. That's
we really did. Not cynically.
We thought it was going to be a long shot for Adam Morgan to meet the president.
Right.
He did get to wave. He got to see him coming right down Capitol Avenue.
He was out there bright and early, braving the bitter cold with his grandmother Jackie early this morning, hoping to get a glance of President Obama this morning.
And here we go.
And
Lindsay
here we
bumps
go.
Into him.
And it happened outside the Hoagland Center for the Arts, and that's where President Obama is talking to his supporters today, right now. And Lindsay Hess is there as well, continuing our coverage today here.
So Adam Morgan, one of hundreds of people who've seen the president out and about in Springfield, and we've been getting so many pictures and videos. We're posting them online, we're tweeting them, retweeting them. This is a picture coming in from Abigail from the feed store right here. She had a pretty close view. It looks like she was having lunch herself. So a fantastic shot of the president coming in, shaking hands. We heard from Brett relaying what some of those people said in the feed store. Down to earth, remember their names, just talking about their day and talking about lunch. Let's take a look at some of the next shots that we have. There's Jeff at Jay Ferguson, on Twitter. A selfie with Air Force One as it's about to touch down. That's a pretty good shot. Good timing right there.
You know, Adam, there have been a number of people who have, braved the cold today, whether they've gone along the motorcade route, or they've gone to the Hoagland Center, or they've tried to go somewhere downtown, to go to the state capitol to get a glimpse of President Obama today. We want you, if you have those photos, to send them to us, whether through any form of social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, and just send it to #PresidentReturns. We would love to share them with all of our viewers here on WICS, whether News Channel 20 or Fox, Illinois. We'd love it.
A lot of people just tuning in this afternoon. Maybe you missed the president's speech. We are going to go through a couple highlights over the next several minutes here. Let's first start with the president being introduced and walking up to the General Assembly for the first time as president. An historic trip here. President Obama being announced for his speech. Let's listen in.
We need the members to be in their chairs. It's my great honor and the great honor of President Cullerton to present to you a son of Illinois, the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Hey! Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
An excited, energetic, very happy President Obama back in the House chamber. He did serve in the Senate, but back in the Illinois State House.
Yes, very casual, cracked a lot of jokes, some very serious note. You know, and he kept people on their toes. He talked about the seriousness of the situation here in the state capitol. He talked about moving forward in the direction that the state needs to go to, working along party lines, and, you know, making sure that the lawmakers are able to move forward and work together so that the state can come to a compromise, which is very important.
A lot of highlights still to come. We're going to start, however, with one of the lighter notes here. This President Obama, early in his speech, before we get to some of the analysis, a replay of President Obama looking back at his time in the Illinois State Legislature. Let's listen into President Obama talking about his time in the Illinois Senate.
And it's great to be in the state capitol. You know, being here today calls to mind the first time I spoke on the Senate floor, almost 20 years ago. And I was passionate, idealistic, ready to make a difference. Just to stand in that magnificent chamber was enough to fill me up with a heightened sense of purpose. And I probably needed a little dose of reality when I first arrived. So one day I rose to speak about a bill. And I thought I had made some compelling points with irrefutable logic. And I was about to sit down, feeling pretty good about myself, when Pate Phillip sauntered over to my desk. Now, there's some young people here, so for those of you who don't remember, Pate Phillip was the Senate Majority Leader at the time. He was a Marine, and big shock of white hair, chomped on a cigar, was so politically incorrect that you don't even know how to describe it. But he always treated me well, and he came by and he slapped me on the back. He said, "Kid, that was a pretty good speech. In fact, I think you changed a lot of minds. But you didn't change any votes." And he signaled and the gavel, and we got blown out. So that was my first lesson in humility.
President Obama speaking about his time in the Illinois Senate. We were laughing about the line when he said they called us mushrooms, the freshman senators. Didn't get a lot of sunlight and fed us a lot of manure.
And a lot of manure,
yeah, that was certainly, as we mentioned with Dr. Redfield, we'll talk with him in just a moment, but this is a president who is in command of his audience on his home
on both
turf,
sides,
and was able to navigate the humor and the seriousness of the situation. Pretty nice stuff.
Very, very nice, because he's worked with both the Republicans. You know, he talked about the fact that he came into as a senator with Christine Radogno. So, you know, he was able to really touch on both the Republican side and the Democratic side.
I like that. A lot of shout outs to a lot of his colleagues, past and present, when they got things accomplished. And he's used that as a sign to show, look, we did get things done, and you can get things done as well. We're going to dig into a little more analysis and a lot more highlights from the speech. Again, the president spoke for an hour. We'll bring you the best cuts from that speech when we come back after the break on News Channel 20. Stay with us for special coverage.
You're watching Obama in Springfield. The President Returns, a News Channel 20 special report.
Welcome back to News Channel 20. A very special report here as President Obama returns to Springfield, the place he called home for 7 years as a state senator. About an hour ago, he wrapped up a speech in front of the General Assembly, the first time that he has addressed them since being elected president. Dr. Kent Redfield, professor emeritus of political science, joins us here from University of Illinois Springfield. Dr. Redfield, we watched this speech together. There were a lot of lines that I noticed we were jotting notes at the same time. It was easy to tell that this speech was designed to be picked up by media, spread around, and kind of kick off the president's, if not farewell tour, the legacy tour. Was there a lot of truth behind these words, do you think?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it's very personal and drawing on his experiences within the legislature. And you saw a side of the president that I think you probably didn't see as much as you might have during the last 9 years. I was fortunate enough to spend time kind of staffing a group of four legislators working on campaign finance and ethics that he referenced in the speech. And in those kind of one-on-one small group settings, you saw a person who was, you know, very bright but very friendly, self-deprecating, and really, you know, you could see how he could build those relationships.
He mentioned this was not the State of the Union. This was more of letting your hair down for President Obama. As there were lighter moments. This is a look at the General Assembly reaction to him announcing being introduced and starting his speech. The president talked a lot about bipartisanship, talked a lot about compromise, and he did it in a way that was, as Jordan Abudayyeh said from the balcony, that was typically President Obama. Let's listen to one of those moments when he talked about the other side not being the enemy personally, if not professionally. Let's listen.
If we had a bill that we might be able to work together on, it was a pleasure to work with her on. Or Dave Stevenson, who we were together on Public Health and Welfare Committee. And we got some important work done that made a difference in people's lives. And we didn't call each other idiots or fascists who were trying to destroy America, because then we'd have to explain why we were playing poker or having a drink with an idiot or a fascist who was trying to destroy America.
Now that one got quite a bit of laughs, but there is some truth to that line. There's another quick one here that we'll listen to where the president talks about being practical when it comes to working with the other side.
We were willing to forge compromises in pursuit of a larger goal. We were practical when we needed to be.
And that shows the balance between President Obama navigating the humor, but also talking about the real reason that he's here to work with this general legislature, or if not work with them, to tell them what they can do to work together. So far, it's been a struggle. We know that. Yeah,
and so he was always trying to make this larger point about civility, about bipartisanship, and yet the reality kept pulling him back in terms of the differences between the two sides of the aisles on things like voting rights or redistricting. And so, you know, it is harder to get beyond. Everybody knows you need to do work in the best interest, but then the short-term strategic advantage of doing your partisan interest gets in the way. That's what makes it so hard.
I saw a lot of parallels between today's address and when the Pope visited Washington, D.C. earlier last year. If it's going to take anybody to get people to work together, I think you think of these big name figures, and we won't equate President Obama to the Pope by any means, but this is someone who you feel could rise above. It'll be interesting to see in the coming days and weeks how practical that really is and if this message hit home. Reaction already coming in from across the political spectrum. Congressman Rodney Davis, as we talked about a little bit earlier, was not invited on Air Force One. I believe that was not a personal issue. It was an issue of scheduling, but he reacted to the president's address and talked about how he found it ironic that a president called for bipartisanship, and Congressman Davis felt he wasn't practicing that in Washington. Let's listen.
For the president who was going to talk about bipartisan cooperation, I found it ironic that there was no one from the other party that was part of his travel itinerary.
And so there we are. We're hearing already from Congressman Davis, the president may be able to come back and get some things accomplished in Illinois, but for Republicans, particularly on the other side of the aisle, they feel that Washington needs to be fixed first, and the president doesn't really have a leg to stand on. Does that hold water, that argument right now?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of partisan acrimony in Washington, D.C., and the fault lies on both in the presidency and in Congress, and that's why it's so difficult to say let's talk about general principles and what's in the public interest, because everybody takes it personally. You know, I didn't get a seat on the plane. I didn't, you know, if the president disagrees with my policies, they must be bad people. If Congress disagrees with my policies, they must be bad people. He was trying to make the point that you could disagree without being, you know, painting each other as being un-American, unpatriotic. We've had way too much of that. But you always get drugged back to the specifics of my particular problems rather than looking at the big picture.
Bringing it back to Illinois, we have heard that from leaders at the four tops. Governor Rauner, we've heard it from a lot of members of the General Assembly that are frustrated with the way things are going or the work that's not being done. They talk about, in platitudes, saying, I want to work professionally with the governor. We've heard that, talking about respect they have for each other, and yet it's not connecting to the work that's being done. It's not translating in the meetings because, as you mentioned earlier today, they're not changing their attitude. They're not changing their way of thinking. In your opinion here, and you followed Illinois politics as long as anybody, what does it take, and I'm not asking for a solution here, I don't know that there is one on a short term, but what is it going to take, if not President Obama, to fix this at the Illinois State House?
Well, we are talking about principles here, you know, big issues and conflicts as if, you know, one side is asking the other to totally capitulate rather than get in the middle. Right. And we're also talking about these things in the abstract, which is a point the president made. You know, it's fine to talk about local control or union rights in the abstract, but when you're not talking about what's the damage being done to individuals, who's being hurt by the inability to compromise, to come together. And so that's really the tragedy, is while we're fighting this out in these lofty terms in terms of the budget stalemate, real people are getting hurt in ways that are, you know, it's going to be very lasting. And so it's how do you bring the politics down to talking about, you know, the interests of the people, and the people's interests have been lost over the last you know, year in terms of the way things have gone in Illinois politics.
The president addressed that in the next soundbite when he talked about the people who are being hurt. He was illustrating the difference between big money and the people who are being hurt, evoking places all around Illinois. Let's listen to the president here on that.
I just saw a story the other day showing that if you rank all 50 states across categories like education levels and household incomes and race and religion, the one state that most closely mirrors America as a whole is Illinois, this state.
And that's talking about socioeconomic factors, education. When you average all of those out, the study he's referring to says Illinois most closely resembles that average American state. The president also talked about different areas throughout the state and different people that should not have their voices outshouted, so to speak. Let's listen to the president on this.
And it convinced me that if we just approached our national politics the same way the American people approach their daily lives, at the workplace, at the Little League game, at church or the synagogue, with common sense and a commitment to fair play and basic courtesy, that there is no problem that we couldn't solve together.
President there talking about working together, obviously the theme of today. I've seen in the past couple months a lot of movement from lower members of the General Assembly trying to do what they can to get things done, voicing frustration in a lack of motion, a lack of movement at the top from the four leaders. Young Republicans and Democrats coming together in northern Illinois, making, I believe it's called, if not Freedom Caucus, something similar in the Illinois State House, saying we're younger members who agree on a lot of social issues, perhaps, on a lot of other issues. Maybe it's time for us to come together. Is the way to fix this a grassroots campaign? Is it going to come from elsewhere outside of the four leaders? Or is the Illinois political system designed to go through the governor and those four top people? Well,
ultimately, power does reside with the legislative leaders and the governor. But their inability to get movement at this point means that, you know, to change the dynamic, you know, we're going to have basically a revolution in terms of the members of the General Assembly, or we're going to have some major catastrophe that's going to be a game changer. And I don't know what that is. You know, is crashing a university, will that get us to the point of saying, you know, we've got to step back and find some common ground? Because, you know, Illinois is so diverse. You know, it is average because you add together all of the differences. And, you know, you can't get anything done unless you get to the common ground, and right now we can't get to the common ground.
Comptroller Munger has talked about consent decrees that started way back last summer, and Illinois doesn't really have a lot of pressure points, at least in the beginning of the budget impasse, because they're still being forced to pay for a lot of things through the courts. And until it gets to the point, as you mentioned, maybe it takes a school shutting down. Eastern Illinois really struggling right now, laying off upwards of 190 people and looking for more because the state has failed to make payments. We know that the University of Illinois has the system of the 3 campuses, has a larger bank, so to speak, right now, and they're able to absorb some of those costs. But we see a lot of, at the University of Springfield, where you work, it's difficult to get by. Students are really falling through the cracks for MAP grants. We've talked about social science, or social programs for people that have really been hurt. What do you see as the next big step that's going to be a tipping point? Do we come to a point where the consent decrees run out? Do we wait for July 1 of 2016 and the next fiscal year? Is there a breaking point in sight?
Well, the consent decrees are not going to run out. We're not going to be, at some point, we're not going to be able to pay bills on time, or even more so. And, but we'll always, those will keep going. But having the courts run the state doesn't work. Having the legislature run the state, which it basically did under Governor Blagojevich, that's certainly not working. And so, to function, you've got to get the chief executive and the legislature together. And, the next tipping point will probably have to do with higher education. There's not a lot left after that. But, and then we're going to run out of money. We're not, because of cash flow issues, even though we've funded elementary and secondary education, we won't be able to make payments when we get to the end of the fiscal year. So this is going to crash at some point. But the fact that it's come to that is to the discredit of everybody involved that's making decisions. The short-term pain, long-term gain, we've gone way past short-term at this point, and both sides are at fault.
Longest impasse in Illinois history. Let's end this segment, as we have a lot more to come after the break, but let's end this segment on a more positive note, as President Obama talked about recognizing those differences in people at the opposite party and still working through them. Take a listen.
What we discovered was that despite our surface differences, Democrats and Republicans, downstate hog farmers, inner city African Americans, suburban business people, Latinos from Pilsen or Little Village, despite those differences, we actually had a lot in common. We cared about our communities, we cared about our families, we cared about America.
And there's the president talking about sweeping through the state, so to speak, as he talked about the different areas, Quad Cities, Galesburg, the city of Chicago, all those different areas in this diverse state. When we first started this, when Governor Rauner was elected, we talked a little bit about how it was the state of Chicago and it was the state of Illinois. That is way out the window, and it's now gone to partisan politics. And it's so fractured now that I can't keep it straight, because there's no longer downstate versus Chicago. There's no longer suburban versus downstate. It depends on the issues, and it seems like nobody's able to band together.
Yeah, and as long as that continues, it's not going to work. A stalemate is not the system breaking down. The stalemate is the system working the way it's supposed to work when you don't have compromise. It was designed that way. And until we get back to trying to find some common ground, and everybody says, okay, we need common ground. It just is my common ground rather than your common ground. Until we get past that, this is going to continue, and that's not a pretty prospect.
All right, whole lot more to come here on News Channel 20. We're going to take a quick break. A lot of reaction coming in from lawmakers and all throughout this city here. We are monitoring President Obama right now. He's at the Hoagland Center for the Arts. We'll continue monitoring his visit as well as reaction to his speech. We're back in just a moment on News Channel 20.
You're watching Obama in Springfield. The President Returns, a News Channel 20 special report.
3:13, Maggie Bateau. We've been on the air for 4 hours now. We'll continue to do so as President Obama makes an historic trip back to Springfield. Right now, he's at the Hoagland Center for the Arts in downtown Springfield, talking to a lucky group of people who got some tickets. Again, these were not on sale. They didn't go to the public. Were not. We heard a couple people from Lindsay Hess that gave them to their children. Incredible right there for the 16-year-old. Hey, guess what, son? I'm going to let you go see the president. That's pretty good. That takes a lot to give that ticket up.
That takes love.
Yes,
that
exactly.
That takes a lot of love right there.
That's right. We've got team coverage all throughout the city of Springfield. We are working to get reaction from the president's address. First, we check in with John Rieger outside the state capitol building with more from reaction there. John?
All right, John Rieger here at the state capitol. We have just been told by this police officer that we have to get off the street. All police vehicles are off the street here. If we take a shot up here, earlier, this is, of course, in front of the state capitol. That tent is where the president stepped into his vehicle, out of sight. And then before he left, that entire area had tons of police officers and Secretary of State patrols at every vehicle. They are all gone. This street was covered with police vehicles. As we see here, this is the final one leaving Monroe Street in front of the Capitol. This was ringed with police officers. This street was closed off from, about 8 o'clock is when they started towing this morning as they leave. Of course, this entire area was, this was the center of the universe for police security. Now he's going the wrong way. Here's a police officer coming the right way. If we can pan and follow him. Again, the president went out this way and took a right onto, let's see, he's staying, see, they're clearing the police officers right now. I don't know where they're all heading, but there have been 8 or 10 vehicles just leave. But once again, we saw police officers and Secretary of State patrol officers in their uniforms, some of them after 18-hour shifts. We saw them leave. They were on double time, overtime, and then the morning shift then left at 3 o'clock. So a lot of tired officers in uniform. Again, this was the center of the universe, as I say, for security. And there were some people viewing here on this side of the street. Now everybody's been told to leave and everybody is gone. So the president has left, and that means this is an empty, abandoned area. So he's moved on to the Hoagland Center, and I know that people there are very excited, as they were here. But now it's like a ghost town. Back to you.
All right, John Rieger out and about. Pretty good stuff.
It is. And you know, you never know when a president comes to town with Secret Service. There might be another detour. You're not sure.
Sure.
So there may be some reason why local law enforcement are looking to make some changes. So there could be a reason why they're asking to clear the streets.
The other thing to keep in mind, we talked about the road closure map that we've had up before, and I don't know if we need to see it again yet. We can wait as we get closer to departure time. But again, the president will need to make his way back to the airport. So the roads that were closed earlier, if they're not closed again, if they haven't been closed all day, they will be reclosed as the president makes his way back. So something to keep in mind here. It's not safe yet to park on the streets. So it's preparation as far as, you know, the city of Springfield and law enforcement and Secret Service, making sure that the path is clear for the president to get back to the airport and whatever detour they may need in order to get him back there safely. And again, the 2 items left on the president's schedule are the Hoagland Center event at 3:30. Let's take a quick look at that map as we talk about it. So 3:30 for the Hoagland Center, and then at 5 o'clock or thereabout is when we expect the president to depart from the airport. So again, looking at this map on the far west there, the red line north and south, that is Walnut, which eventually leads to the airport. And then right now the president's on the east side of this map at Capitol and 6th. That's the Hoagland Center. So roads closed throughout the downtown area. Right, and John was at First and Monroe, and so that's where they were clearing off. And so, and Monroe is, of course, West Monroe is one of the routes that was cleared off as well. So we don't expect the president to start speaking at the Hoagland for another 10 minutes or so if they stay on schedule. But again, flexibility is key, and I know that Lindsay Hess will alert us if there's any movement there at the Hoagland Center, if the president's on the move early perhaps, or if there are any delays. We'll keep an eye on that. At this time, we want to go to an interview that we had earlier today, a very insightful interview with one of the inner circle of President Obama, a woman who's from Chicago, has been with the president for about 10 years at least, and helped him get to the White House, helped him stay in the White House, and has a lot of input on top decisions. Evan Peterson interviewed senior advisor Valerie Jarrett this morning. Let's take a listen.
Here outside the state capitol to my left is Valerie Jarrett, the senior advisor for President Obama's administration. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be back in Springfield. I was here 9 years ago on this day. It was even colder, if you can believe that, than it is right now, but our hearts were warm, and the President just arrived. He's so excited to have a chance to come back and be with some of his former colleagues and address the nation from Springfield, Illinois.
Right. Now, is this a political homecoming for President Obama coming back to Illinois?
Well, of course, I think it's really more than just a political homecoming. He has friends here on both sides of the aisle. He'll have a chance to build upon his remarks in the State of the Union, where he talks about the fact that really Springfield is a microcosm of our country, from farmlands to inner city, but where he was able to develop deep relationships with Republicans and Democrats and independents and actually do the people's business, and that we need to really work on that. He mentioned that, how important it was to break that political system that's been broken for so long, and how hard it would be when he spoke here 9 years ago, and he will continue that theme today.
Now, we heard in the President's State of the Union address that that's something he really wants to press upon for today's speech, is reaching across the aisle. What kind of message can we expect that he will be delivering to lawmakers who, in today's state, is so divided?
Well, unfortunately, Springfield is not the only state capital where we have these kinds of divisions. Washington has the same challenges, and so his message is to remind people about why they got into politics in the first place. What should we be doing to make it easier for people to vote? How can we get all of this money out of politics where a few people are affecting the outcome of an election rather than the American people? What can we do to make sure our districts actually represent the people and give them a voice?
What will that tone look like when he addresses the General Assembly?
Well, I think he'll have a chance to tell some stories about his days back in the General Assembly. There'll be funny stories. I think he is just so excited to be here and to reacquaint with some of his former colleagues again on both sides of the aisle. But I also think it'll be a speech about a challenge for all of us about what more can we do. He said in the State of the Union he's committed to continuing to work as hard as he can for his last 11 months to bring us together, and what better place to deliver that message than where he was first able to do it, right here in Springfield.
It's been 9 years since the president sat right here and said, I'm going to be running for the presidency, and now he's in the end of his administration and he's come back home. Is this significant to him and his administration?
Very much so. He has wonderful memories of Springfield. He has wonderful memories of representing Chicago in Springfield. That day he chose this location quite by intention to launch his campaign, and so it is a homecoming for him, and one that has us all very excited.
Now, his visit has put some Republicans feeling that they are a little bit at odds with the president, feeling that they haven't been quite close to him as some of the Democrats have been. Any chance to make amends for those who feel that they've been kind of pushed aside?
Well, I think that his tone has never been one to push anyone aside. He's always spoke, since the day I met him nearly 25 years ago, about a big tent, an inclusive tent, where everyone's voices should be heard, where we can find that common ground. And just because you disagree on one issue doesn't mean you have to disagree on all. And there are good examples right now. Criminal justice, for example, is one where in Washington we're seeing bipartisan support from both sides of the aisle to move forward with something that's good for our country. So he is as optimistic about our country's future as he was 9 years ago when he made that announcement. So it's good to come full circle.
Now, he has the eyes of the state on him, from everyone from Chicago all the way down to Southern Illinois. For those who can't sit inside there and hear what he has to say, what should the citizens, the average Illinoisan, take away from his address?
The fact that we all have a responsibility to make our nation that more perfect union, that those who we elect have a real responsibility to engage the American people, make them a part of the process, and that we have made a great deal of progress over the course of our nation's history, but we still have hard work to do, and everyone can play a part in that.
Valerie Jarrett, Senior Advisor to President Obama, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you. Get warm.
Thank you. For now, we're going to send it back to you all in the studio.
All right, again, that was Evan Peterson earlier this morning before the president's address, speaking with Valerie Jarrett, Senior Advisor. A couple of housekeeping issues here. The president did take the stage at about 2:56, so he has been speaking now for about 26 minutes at the Hoagland Center. According to the pool release here, he took the stage and said it was good to see everybody. I see all kinds of folks in the audience. Again, this is at that private meeting in the Hoagland Center, so no cameras allowed, but our Illinois media pool people are sending out releases. So the president's saying it's great to see everybody, and everybody's saying it's a fantastic atmosphere in there. Maybe no cameras is a good thing. They're probably letting their hair down, enjoying a little bit, celebrating perhaps after some of the serious notes that were struck in the speech.
Well, you know, here's the thing. President Obama has let his hair down since coming back home to Springfield. And I think everybody is at ease knowing that the president is here, and they're able to kind of take a little sigh of relief knowing that their old friend is back home.
Yeah, good to see him back. Yeah. It looks like the president is a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm sure our crews are on their way to their posts. Correct. As they prepare for his trip back to the Abraham Lincoln Capitol Airport. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about reaction to the president's speech from those who are in the chamber to hear it. Back in a moment on News Channel 20.
You're watching Obama in Springfield. The President Returns, a News Channel 20 special report.
Welcome back to News Channel 20. Adam Rife here with Stacy Skryzak now coming on for Maggie Pateau. We're going in shifts here at News Channel 20 as we continue our team coverage all throughout the morning. Reactions starting to pour in on President Obama's address here.
And earlier, right after the speech, Jordan Abudayyeh, our State House reporter, she was able to catch up with former Governor Pat Quinn. Let's take a listen.
1 million people in Illinois, more people got health care because of Obamacare. You know, I signed that bill to make it possible in Illinois. So, I mean, that's really, those are real things that people can understand. And I think, you know, he was saying today that if we're going to have a strong democracy, it starts with strong citizens.
Do you think his message will have any impact on the current situation here in Springfield?
Well, I think he made his points about, you know, collective bargaining is a fundamental right that needs to be protected. I hope the message got across.
Whose seat do you think might have been warm today, Governor?
Pardon me?
Whose seat might have been warm today, Governor, as the president spoke about bipartisanship, some of the other things?
Well, I think that's the essence of democracy, is working together. The people on who are a different political party aren't your enemies. They're, you know, folks may differ in opinion, but, you know, we're all in this together. And I think the president today really made that point that everybody in and nobody left out when it comes to democracy. We should make voting as easy as possible so as many people as possible can have their voice heard.
I get the feeling some Democrats and some Republicans up there might have been thinking, oops, I think he's talking about me. I'm uncomfortable.
Well, I think the president's a wise man, and he comes from our state. And I think really all of us should be very grateful to him for these last 9 years in particular, where I was there on February 10th of 2007 at the old state capitol when he announced his candidacy for president. He's done an outstanding job, and we should be very proud that we sent him from Illinois to our whole country.
It's been a year since we changed governors. Have you made peace with the situation?
Well, no, I want to make sure that everybody in Illinois gets a fair shake, and we have a long way to go on that. Right now, a lot of people aren't being treated fairly, especially students who have scholarships to go to college. They have the ability to get into college, but they need a financial scholarship to help them pay the bill. And to hold those students hostage, it's just plain wrong. And so I'm very committed to making sure we treat everybody fairly when it comes to education and health care and everything else.
Sounds like you'll be on a ballot soon.
I believe in voting on referendums. I've been doing that for more than 40 years, so I think that's a real important thing in Illinois we can take from the president's speech today, that the highest office in our democracy is the office of citizen, and citizens should have more voice, and one way to do it is through petition referendum.
Pleasure, Governor. Thanks.
Former Governor Pat Quinn, their industrious State House reporter Jordan Abudayyeh using the cell phone to get that video, as cameras weren't allowed in until much after President Obama's speech. I expect it was much like the running of the bulls in Pamplona as soon as they released the media from the cage.
It's tough because we have been restricted in the media. So people getting very creative. I'm very impressed with Jordan.
Right. So she's getting reaction from all throughout the State House, from all corners. Again, Pat Quinn, just a citizen here, and we say just, but President Obama referenced that as his highest calling, being a citizen of the United States. Also reaction coming in from Congressman Rodney Davis, as we mentioned. We heard a little bit of a phone message from him, but here is a statement that he released.
I appreciate the president traveling to my district and his message of bipartisanship, but actions speak louder than words, and I hope he takes this advice back to Washington as well. Unfortunately, I have not seen a lot of bipartisanship from this president since I came to Congress. Just yesterday, he released his most divisive budget yet, a budget that uses the same failed tactics that leaders from his own party have used in Springfield for decades. The president's budget raises taxes, increases spending, and furthers a climate change agenda that will increase gas prices by 24 cents per gallon. Illinoisans know all too well what increased taxes and spending does to economic growth. That's why in the coming days and weeks, Republicans in Congress will put forth a budget that addresses the true drivers of our nation's debt and creates a pro-growth economic environment. That was U.S. Congressman Rodney Davis. He made it no secret when we heard from him earlier this week that he was not invited by President Obama to come back here. That was kind of in response to Senator Dick Durbin coming on the plane.
And to expand on that, it's not just the trip on Air Force One. Earlier this week, Congressman Davis on Monday saying President Obama hasn't been very inclusive to Illinois Republicans in Washington, D.C. in general, whether it's the lawmaking process or in meetings. So Congressman Davis there, you can tell in his words and in his speech that he's not happy right now with President Obama's approach, calling it ironic that he would preach bipartisanship while at the same time excluding members in Washington. Reaction coming in again from all across the political spectrum here in Illinois. We have finally our well-waited for State House reporter Jordan Abudayyeh is live at the Capitol with a look at what reaction we're getting from lawmakers and pundits at the Capitol. Jordan?
Surprising how quickly everything returns to normal as soon as President Obama leaves the Capitol. Cameras allowed back in the building, security is lifted, and people are walking around freely right now. We did catch up with a few lawmakers right after the speech as they were filing out of the General Assembly House chambers. Now, we caught up with Senator Christine Radogno. She is the Republican leader, and she actually started in the same class in the state Senate as President Obama. So he actually name-dropped her today, said that she is one of those people in the General Assembly that is a Republican that he can work with. They had worked together in the past. Senate President John Cullerton has also noted Senator Radogno as someone they can work with and work together, and they have created some big bipartisan compromises out of the Senate. So today we caught up with her. She said she would rate the speech a 9 out of 10. She thought it was a great speech. She says the president is a very affable person. He really gets along with anybody, and she thought his message was one that the State House needs right now. Treasurer Michael Frericks, he actually got to give the president a quick handshake, introduce himself, and President Obama told him that he remembered him from his time in the state Senate, and he said you can never forget that height. We also talked with a couple of our local lawmakers, everyone, both sides of the aisle, really impressed by the speech. We didn't really hear many negative things by it, even though some Democrats were clapping at times when Republicans were silent. Everyone seemed to really enjoy the message, and I think all of the politicians here at the State House understand that right now is a very transformative time at the State House. They really need to start working together to get things done. And so I think everyone went into the speech with an open mind. Nobody really knew what the president was going to talk about. And so we did hear a lot of the things that were expected from the president. And a lot of people say it was a great speech. They really enjoyed it. We also talked to Senator Kwame Raoul. He is actually the senator.
I presented my own first bill.
President Obama stopped by his old office today. Senator Raoul said he was happy to share that space with him once again. And Senator Raoul said that when the president made the move to the U.S. Senate, he gave him some advice back in 2004. And he said, go out with people, get drinks, play poker, go out around Springfield when you're down here and you have to be here for a couple days, because it's hard to call your friend an idiot or a schmuck or all of these words that we sometimes hear in the political fray when you know them. You know, you can't say, oh, he's a fascist, is what the president said, when you're playing poker with him the next day. So he said that's really how we get a more sane politics. And so Senator Kwame Raoul said that President Obama gave him that advice when he was a senator. And Raoul said that he was excited that the president talked about his time here in the state legislature and really went back to that message that we all need to see each other not as just political foes, but as people, and really bring a new level of respect to our politics. And that was really the main message, and it resonated with people on both sides of the aisle. For now, live at the Capitol, Jordan Abudayyeh, News Channel 20.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Whole lot of reaction. And again, we'll hear from those people as we go throughout the afternoon. We've got crews at the Capitol, multiple crews working to gather sound and edit that and get it ready for our show. So good to hear that a lot of people taking this message positively, no matter what side of the aisle they're on.
Yeah, the humor. I think the humor is what helped
Absolutely.
For both sides. Yeah. Okay, and President Obama right now speaking over at the Hoagland Center to a select group. You had to have tickets. It's a private event. He started speaking at about 3 o'clock. We're going to have much more on that as well when we come back.
You're watching Obama in Springfield. The President Returns, a News Channel 20 special report.
Welcome back to News Channel 20, joined again by Dr. Kent Redfield doing yeoman's work for us this afternoon. We appreciate your time as always. Interesting interview we saw just before the break. We haven't heard much from former Governor Pat Quinn, Jordan Abudayyeh, and several others catching up with him in the hallowed halls of the State House, talking a lot about that bipartisanship. But of course, as a Democrat, we expect him to side with President Obama in some sort, in some fashion. What did you hear from the interview with former Governor Quinn?
Well, certainly the theme about citizenship and everybody being, you know, part on board or part of the boat or whatever the right.
Are these people towing the line essentially?
Well, that was something that Governor Quinn always wanted to talk about. Everybody's included, and so that certainly resonates with him. When he talked about redistricting and citizens initiatives, again, those are things, you know, he has always been an advocate of more citizens initiatives. Redistricting will probably get done, but it won't get done because of an agreement with the General Assembly. It'll probably get on the ballot because of a citizens initiative that's going forward. So, you know, the one thing in the terms of the specific recommendations the President made that might get done is redistricting reform. It's unlikely the legislature will do anything about campaign finance reform. There's not much you can do from a state level. And the Democrats will probably pass a same-day registration and voting bill. Now, whether the governor will sign it or not, you know, I'm not sure. And so, or whether, you know, I mean, if it's one of these take it or leave it, I'm going to veto it, you know, can they get together and agree on how to expand voting rights? That certainly will be a test in terms of the General Assembly, whether or not they can find some compromise on what ought to be a core principle, that we should make the voting experience easier, which is what the President said.
Easier and more fair is what he mentioned in his speech. I mentioned we haven't heard much from Governor Pat Quinn. It seems like he hasn't lost a step in front of the cameras here. He definitely handled questions about policy and about what he expects or hopes for the state of Illinois. And then our friend Dave Dahl, the radio reporter, asking, it sounds like you're running on a ballot here. It sounds like you have a couple initiatives up your sleeve. We haven't talked too much about the future of Governor Pat Quinn, if he has one in politics, but he's hinted at the possibility of re-entering in some form state-level politics. Do we expect to hear anything from him? I wouldn't say that interview there in the halls is the reintroduction of Pat Quinn, but could we see more from the former governor?
I think you're going to have to let some time go by. I mean, if he wants to re-enter politics, you're going to have a cooling off period, just like, you know, Richard Nixon dropped out of politics for a long period of time before
after losing to John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, before he came back and actually did win again. But right now, you know, the negatives are way too high. I mean, you know, certainly a lot of people were voting against Governor Quinn in the last gubernatorial election, and it would be hard to imagine the Democrats turning to him, particularly for something like the U.S. Senate or the governorship.
Speaker Madigan, in an interview with Jordan Abudayyeh, talked about the election wasn't so much a pro-Governor Rauner vote. It was much more of a someone other than Pat Quinn vote. So interesting to see that. We're being told right now that people are stepping out of the Hoagland Center for the Arts, a sign perhaps that President Obama has finished up his speech. We hope to have a shot of that in just a moment. Again, this is a live look across the street, across 6th Street, looking at the marquee of the Hoagland Center for the Arts. You do see people much more casual than we've seen earlier today. So a sign that President Obama may have ended his remarks, perhaps even left the building. I'm not sure if our photographer can pan left as we saw that motorcade went down Capitol and pulled up on the left side of the building. So if we pull out here, thank you very much for our photographer, Matt Gaskins there. It looks like the motorcade's still there, at least parts of it queued up and ready to go back on Capitol. Good shot there, Matt, as we go down the sidewalk. The cars have turned around. Roads still closed again, as they have been since 8 a.m. And we would expect from just inferring here from the way they're parked, I don't see the presidential limousine, but these are the vehicles from the motorcade, perhaps heading back towards the Capitol building before turning north on Walnut to return to the Abraham Lincoln Capitol Airport. Again, that's just me assuming that's what they're doing. We are expecting anything, flexible changes from the Secret Service. I do see the ambulance in the far background behind the children with the pink and teal. That was part of the motorcade as well, and I don't imagine that if the president was gone, the ambulance would not be as well. So I think the president is in there perhaps, but again, that's just from several blocks away here in the studio. We'll keep an eye on this as we do see much less of a police presence. We don't see really anybody there keeping the crowds back. It seems much more casual than before. So we will keep an eye on that. We know Lindsay Hess is working that scene to get reaction from the Hoagland Center, as well as people who were inside perhaps listening to the president's remarks. If we keep on this shot, that's just fine with me, but we are joined in studio by Dr. Kent Redfield. We were discussing former Governor Pat Quinn, and he left after I would say it was when we talk about the referendum on Illinois politics at the time, Speaker Madigan saying it was a vote for anyone but Quinn. Would you agree with that sentiment over a year later?
Oh, I think that the former governor's negatives were certainly a big factor. But, I think you also saw a candidate who, had tremendous resources, but really learned how to be a candidate and got much better at politics over the course of the campaign. We've had very wealthy people who have, not won election. We've had people with terrible negatives, like former Governor Blagojevich, who managed to get reelected in 2006. And so, you have to give Governor Rauner credit for running a good campaign, in addition to the negatives and the obvious negative reaction to Governor Quinn's terms in office.
Just 15 short months ago that election took place, and amazing to think that was an election unlike anything we had ever seen. The amount of money, and you may remember the totals off the top of your head, I sure don't, but upwards of $100 million spent by both candidates combined, something we'd never seen. The majority of that coming from Governor Rauner, of course, and his backers.
Yeah, but huge amounts, $40 million on the Quinn side. Huh? And, a lot of independent expenditures, coming from unions, whereas a lot of the independent expenditures we're seeing now in the primaries this year around are coming from Republican groups. And so when the president was talking about a lot of dark money in the system, it really comes from both sides. I mean, it's certainly sometimes the Koch brothers get more attention and some other groups don't. But, it is a problem within politics, American politics, that we have to fix, because it does tend to emphasize the polarization, the negative messages, and it really degrades the nature of politics. And so, a lot of the president's themes were national, but they also, when you talk about redistricting, campaign finance reform, voting rights, those are things that are front and center in Illinois.
All right, Jordan Abudayyeh is at the State House. We're going to get reaction on that. We have other crews all throughout the city as we prepare for President Obama's return to the Abraham Lincoln Capitol Airport. Before we get to that, we want to thank you again for all your help this afternoon. It's been a pleasure watching this historic event with Dr. Kent Redfield from WICS.
Certainly, glad to be here.
Appreciate having you here. We're going to send it back to Stacy at the desk for a look at social media now that we have a lot of people on the move from the Hoagland. Stacy?
All right, thank you. And we do want to mention SMTD just tweeting out about 10 minutes ago, there is still some traffic downtown. Some of the buses actually stuck, as Adam just referenced, that motorcade and some of the roadblocks as President Obama's motorcade gets ready to return to the airport. So just an FYI with SMTD, there are some buses that are delayed or stuck. Now, we do want to take a look at some of the social media. We've been asking you all day to send your photos to us, and we've been getting a lot of great ones. This one from Joey Kroll. This shows shows the motorcade. They've been all through town, going from the airport down Walnut to downtown and now at the Hoagland Center. Keep those pictures coming. All you have to do, send them to us on Facebook, through email, or just use the hashtag President Returns. We'll find them on Twitter, and we'd love to share them on the news later. We have much more on the President's return to Springfield when we come back.